Hello again, Internet, and welcome back to TV Coast to Coast, a semi-regular telegathering of TV critics posted all over the country. Christy Turnquist in Portland is taking the week off, but we've got Mark DeWidziak in Cleveland and Vicki Hyman in New Jersey, and I'm Dave Walker with the Times-Picayune in New Orleans. We're doing sort of a potpourri this time of all different kinds of television offerings. Starting off with Mark, who's going to talk about Wayward Pines coming up on Fox. Vicky's going to talk about Bessie, a made-for movie that's going to air on HBO coming up. And I've got a really interesting period documentary that sort of ties into the ending of Mad Men. And if it doesn't, I'm going to make it. So we're going to start off with Wayward Pines. And I'm glad Mark is talking about this because I think this is really tricky. I think even if you define the genre too carefully on this show, it's almost a bit of a spoiler. It might be easier to think of it in terms of other things we've seen that are close, and I'm sure you're going to get at this, but definitely a Twin Peaks vibe, definitely a Lost thing going on here. I'll let you take over now and tell us how they execute this. Take it, Mark.
Okay, well, and it's a tricky show to talk about because it's not a show that you just immediately go, wow, this is the second coming of Twin Peaks, and nor is it a misfire. There's a lot of stuff in this show that keeps you coming back, and if you keep coming back, you're rewarded for it. If you can make it to the third or fourth episode, you're going to find really good reasons to move to the town of Wayward Pines. And yet, even as you stick with it, you'll hate yourself for sticking with it at times because there are things about this show that drive you crazy. And that, I think, is very, very typical of M. Night Shyamalan. He is the producer and the director behind this. He's become a joke, a punchline in the industry for his excesses, for his self-indulgences. Supernatural used him as a punchline for a joke a couple of seasons ago when the writer character on Supernatural, somebody asked him why he didn't mention himself in the storyline, and he said, well, that's an M. Night level of douchiness, isn't it? So, I mean, he's become a punchline, and in some ways deservedly so. And yet you kind of forget this is the guy who did The Sixth Sense. This is the guy who did so much wonderful stuff. Well, there's a talented filmmaker here. This series embodies all of his incredible, formidable strengths as a filmmaker and his excesses. And the excesses are here, and that's what occasionally will drive you crazy. But what's intriguing about this show, you're just going to keep coming back because you want to figure it out. And as Dave mentioned, there are a lot of reference points on this series. You're going to hear shows like Twin Peaks because it is unremittingly weird, this series. You're going to hear all sorts of other, you're going to hear Hitchcock, you're going to hear Charade, you're going to hear great classic thriller movies. But the thing that this reminded me of more than anything else, and I'm surprised more people haven't referenced it, is The Prisoner. Patrick McGowan's classic series about at this point, a Secret Service agent who winds up in a town where he has to figure out the rules, and it's obviously a government-controlled environment of some kind, and he doesn't know why he's there or how he got there, and he's figuring it out. That's sort of what Wayward Pines is about. It starts with a Secret Service agent played by Matt Dillon, Ethan Burke, on his way to search for two missing agents. On the way, there is a tremendous car crash, and he wakes up in a hospital in a weird town called Wayward Pines. He wakes up to find a nurse, who's the scariest nurse not named Ratchet, played by the wonderful, I'm sorry, I'm blanking out. Melissa Leo.
Melissa Leo
is and it is a wonderful performance. That's one of the things that keep you coming back to the show is the level of performances. He finally gets out among the town, and everywhere he turns, he finds the town is not what he thinks it is. It looks like the perfect Stepford town. And indeed, He's there for a reason. We don't know what the reason is, and he is slowly trying to uncover. He meets a bartender named Juliette Lewis. Aha, but is she a bartender? Um, just wait and see. It has a wonderful supporting performance by Terrence-Howard, who is just kicking butt in Fox's new hit Empire. He plays an ice cream loving sheriff in this. It's typical of the wonderful, lovely performances that are textured into this show. So I'm giving this show a qualified yes. I'm giving this show I liked it. It references so many things I already like, the sort of the genre of paranoia and mystery. But on the other hand, I know there are going to be a lot of people who will say this is typical M. Night self-indulgences. I would say, yes, you're right. I wouldn't argue with that assessment, but I'd also say it's also a lot of M. Night's strengths and brilliances too. So, Vicki, what did you think?
Well, let's see. What did I think? I sat through 5 hours of it last night, so I kind of liked it.
That's a very good sample, though.
I was up until 2 o'clock in the morning because I was like, I'm going to find out what is going on here if it kills me. I did think that the first 2 episodes are going to be, it's going to be hard for, I think, some people to get past. It's uneven, and it's just not what the show turns out to be. And so I kind of feel it should have a warning, like, if you're going to watch this, you have to keep watching to the end of the 3rd episode. You have to, like, make that pact with yourself. So I am talking about something completely different. I'm talking about Bessie, which HBO is airing on Saturday night and starring Queen Latifah, New Jersey native. I got to speak to her for this. Lovely woman. Bessie has actually been Queen Latifah's passion project for more than 2 decades. She had been approached to star in the biopic early in her acting career when she was still more well known for her rapping than her acting, and certainly not yet for her beautiful voice, which she showed off in 2 albums of jazz standards in the 2000s. And I'm glad she waited, because Queen Latifah here delivers a rich, full-throated performance of the Empress of the Blues, and one she admitted in her interview with me that she probably couldn't have done justice to in the early 2000s. Bessie spans from 1913 to 1927, following Bessie Smith as she rose through African-American vaudeville under the tutelage of Ma Rainey. And Monique, by the way, is just as good, if not better, than Queen Latifah. Really wonderful, layered performance. And Bessie Smith becomes one of the richest and most famous African-American singers of her time, all the while flouting conventions as an openly bisexual woman. She was a savvy businesswoman. She was also an alcoholic. She was brash and combative. She was unafraid to slice up a lover after taking too many liberties or scare off the Ku Klux Klan. But Queen Latifah also shows Bessie's vulnerable side, and particularly in a scene that probably everybody's going to be talking about. It's her first nude scene, and it's a scene where she strips off her makeup and her jewels, and finally her costume. And it's quiet, and it's really quite lovely. I just wish that the Bessie narrative had been more fully realized, the story. Like, we're supposed to fill in these blanks about how this motherless, abused child overcame her humble beginnings, seen in brief flashbacks, to achieve fame and fortune. And while it's easy to be distracted by the musical numbers and the gorgeous period sets and the costumes, you really want the film to explore Bessie's motivations a little bit more, how she was able to compartmentalize her very complicated love life, what prompted her to out of the blue adopt a son from an orphanage. That's kind of out of nowhere. There is a really wonderful sequence in the beginning of the movie about Ma Rainey teaching Bessie how to be a blues singer. Blues is not about people knowing you, it's about you knowing people. And I just wish we got to know Bessie a little bit more. I think Queen Latifah is probably going to rack up a couple of awards out of this one. I think it's definitely worth watching. It's actually, when you have such a likable performer and you have her in such a wonderful setting where obviously a lot of money was spent, it's just, makes me a little upset to see that the story isn't a little better. I don't know. Did you guys watch it?
Yeah, I watched it, and I had sort of the same issues you did, but it's for sure one of these prestige HBO things that's just going to rack up Emmys. The production look, the music, the performances, which you pointed out, are especially Monique. Monique's amazing in this, and I don't know why, but it's out of left field for me. Also, Candy Alexander is in here and does a great job. Mark, did you get a chance to see it?
Not yet, but now I'm anxious to.
Yeah, I think it's really good, and I think it's going to do very well. And is Vicky, is your interview posted yet, or?
No, it's posting on Thursday, I believe, and then the
Okay,
release will be Friday.
I'll be sure to link to it because I'm sure we're going to have a lot of interest in New Orleans in that, because actually Vernell Bagneris, who was in Treme and who is a choreographer, a New Orleans legend, did the choreography for that, and so he's an expert in that period style of performing. I really liked it. I'm going to pivot here and get onto my presentation. I wanted to yap about 1971, which is a documentary coming in. There's a My Market on Independent Lens on Monday, and the reason I like it right now, and this must be an accident, but I'm going to run with it anyway. But you know, we're all talking about a show that's going to end on Sunday that's leaving its characters, unless there's some weird science fiction time jump. At about right at about the same time that the events depicted in 1971 happened, and this was a break-in by regular people, parents and teachers, but who were invested in the anti-war movement, who broke into a satellite FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, stole some files and gave them to Congress and the media, to the Washington Post and other outlets, and it resulted in the revelations about the FBI's kind of black operation, spying and disrupting American activity, American anti-war activity. And it was a breakthrough on the level of what Edward Snowden has done in contemporary times. The film itself has recreations with actors, which sometimes is a stop the bus and let me off thing in documentaries, but it was a way to weave in sort of the look and the peril of the times, and certainly the peril to the people who did these break-ins. They're all interviewed in the piece now, you know, in their senior years. For 40 years, they were undetected and undiscovered and unbusted. And this is, I think, the first time they've ever talked on film about what happened and how they lived. They weren't really underground. They just sort of went on with their lives. But always with sort of the threat of discovery. It was really an amazing, brave thing that changed history, that regular folks just pulled off. And I think it's part of this sort of mini-series of pieces that PBS has had in the last few weeks, Last Days in Vietnam and the Kent State documentary, that really immerses the viewer in a period that, you know, that I lived through and Mark lived through. Vicky, you're much too young.
I was born in 1971.
Right. But I think perfectly explains the importance of the events. This is one of that piece, one of that series of shows that I couldn't recommend more. It was haunting in some ways, but also really kind of stirring, and to tie it back into Mad Men, this is the world that Don Draper was really struggling to understand as his life and the decade changed through the course of that series. And, you know, if he survives, you sort of wonder what he would think of what happens in this documentary. At any rate, I do. Anyway, that's it. We should probably head for the exits. Mark and Vicky, thanks so much for playing along, as always. Thank you, Internet, for watching, as always. And someone's going to be back here next week. I don't know who the trio will be. And I think probably talking about Mad Men. What do you guys think?
Yes, if I'm young.
Okay.
There's a slight chance.
Yeah, if we all cheat death between here and then, and Don Draper cheats death between here and then, that's what we'll be talking about. But for now, adios, everybody, and take care.
Take care.